everybody! Today we're going to be talking about the moon, and I have a lot to say about it. So I think we should go ahead and read our Bible story to get started. Of all the people who kept the rules, Saul was the best. "I'm good at being good," he'd tell you. He was very proud and very good, but he wasn't very nice. Saul hated anyone who loved Jesus. He traveled around looking for them. He wanted to catch them and put them in prison. He wanted everyone to forget all about Jesus. He didn't believe Jesus was the rescuer, and he didn't believe Jesus was alive either. You see, Saul had never met Jesus. So one day, Jesus met Saul. Saul was on his way to Damascus when suddenly a dazzling light flashed like lightning. It was brighter than the sun. It was too bright. Saul shielded his eyes and fell to the ground. He heard a loud voice. It was too loud. It gave Saul a headache. "Saul, Saul," said the loud voice, "why are you fighting me?" "Lord," Saul answered, "who are you?" "I am Jesus," said the voice. "When you hurt my friends, you are hurting me too." Saul's whole body trembled. "Go to the city," Jesus said. "I'll tell you what to do." When Saul opened his eyes again, he couldn't see. His helpers had to hold his hand and lead him like a little child. Saul was blind for 3 whole days, and yet it was as if he was seeing for the very first time. Meanwhile, there was a man called Ananias who loved Jesus. Jesus came to him in a dream. "Go to Saul and pray for him, and I will make him see again." Ananias knew all about Saul and how he hated Jesus' followers. "Lord, he has come to hurt us." But Jesus told Ananias, "Saul is the one I've chosen to tell the whole world who I am." So Ananias went to Saul. "Brother Saul," Ananias said, "it was Jesus you met on the road." And Ananias prayed for Saul. Suddenly, Saul could see again, but he saw everything differently. He wasn't mean anymore. He even changed his name from Saul to Paul, which means small and humble, the very opposite of proud. And do you know what Ananias' name means? The Lord is full of grace. Grace is just another word for gift, which is funny because that's just what Paul's message was all about from then on. "It's not about keeping rules," Paul told people. "You don't have to be good at being good for God to love you. You just have to believe what Jesus has done and follow him. Because it's not about trying, it's about trusting. It's not about rules, it's about grace. God's free gift that cost him everything." What had happened to Paul? He met Jesus. Paul got a new job. He called himself a servant and traveled everywhere telling everyone about Jesus. He got shipwrecked 3 times. He even ended up in prison. "God loves us," he wrote from prison. "Nothing can ever, no, not ever, separate us from the never-stopping, never-giving-up, unbreaking, always and forever love of God he showed us in Jesus." And so it was, just as God promised Abraham that dark night all those years before, the family of God's children grew and grew, until one day they would come to number more than even all the stars in the sky. So I love the story of how Saul became Paul. Saul was such a mean guy before. And I know that our Bible didn't really tell us this, but one of the things that made Saul so bad is he just didn't hate people who believed in Jesus. He didn't just put them in jail. He had people who believed in Jesus put to death. He killed them. So he was a super bad guy. If you were Jesus, would you want someone who was killing and hurting your friends to be part of your group? None of us would. But that's not how Jesus works. One of God and Jesus' favorite things to do is to take someone who's so bad, who's so broken and so angry and mean, and he takes that person's heart and he changes it. Because then that person can't say, I believed in Jesus because I was so good, or I was so smart. Because it's pretty clear that Saul wanted nothing to do with Jesus. But Jesus knew Saul, and he knew that he could do great things as Paul. The most important thing that this story teaches us is that Jesus can use anybody, no matter how bad they've been. Which is comforting to me because I know I've done some pretty bad stuff. But it's also good to remember for other people. Just because you know someone who's done something really, really bad doesn't mean that Jesus can't or won't change them. Which means no one is beyond help or hope. And that's the good news of Jesus. All right, we have still got a lot of stuff to talk about the moon. So let's go ahead and look at the calendar and then talk about the moon. Hello again, Miss Haley. We changed our clothes again.
We did, Miss Abby.
Oh, it's good to be in different clothes sometimes. All right. Well, Miss Haley, it's been a little while since we actually did one of these. So what was yesterday's number?
11.
11. That's a 1 and a 1. So then what does that make today's number?
12.
12. And what two numbers make up a 12, Miss Haley?
A 1 and a 2.
A 1 and a 2. So it's one bundle and 2 left over. So if today is number 12, then what's today's day?
Tuesday.
Tuesday, yes. It is Tuesday. All right. Well, so then if it's Tuesday, we're still in the month of May. I think we can say our date together. Do you think we can?
Yeah.
I think so. All right. Let's go then. Today is Tuesday, May 12th, 2020. All right, we've got to sing Weather Watcher really fast. Get ready. Weather Watcher, what do you see? What do you see? Tell us what the weather's like. Tell us what the weather's like. Won't you please? Won't you please? Oh. Well, it was rainy outside today. Is it rainy at your house today? Or sunny today? Who knows? Alright everyone, buckle up. This is going to be a long video with a lot of information, but I'm going to go really, really fast. So last week we talked about all the planets. There are 8. But one thing we didn't talk about was the thing in outer space that's the closest to us. The moon! So let's talk about some moon facts first. Let's pretend that this basketball is the Earth. That would mean the moon is about as big as this container, because the moon is about a quarter the size of Earth. So, you know, about 4 of those maybe. It's an imperfect illustration. Quarantine life. Another way to think about it is that if you were going about 45 miles an hour, which is like a normal driving speed, it would take almost one whole day to drive all the way around the moon. So then if the moon is so big, why does it look so small in our sky? Well, that's because it's pretty far away, even though it's the closest thing to us. The moon is over 200,000 miles away from Earth. So just to kind of have this in your head, you would have to start in Miami, drive all the way to the Olympic National Park, way in the tippy top of the state of Washington, 68 times before you'd done enough driving to get you to the moon. That's a lot of driving. Our country is so big, you guys. The moon takes 27 days to go all the way around the Earth, and in those 27 days, it reflects the sunlight in different ways, which is why the moon sometimes looks big and round and sometimes looks small and skinny. So because we're always able to see the moon, people have always been fascinated by it. So it was inevitable that at some point we would try to get there. So I'm going to tell you that story real quick. Are you ready? Way back in October of 1957, the country of Russia sent the very first artificial satellite into space. Artificial satellite is just a fancy word for space robot. This very first thing was called Sputnik. Sputnik, what a funny name. Then, in January of 1958, only 4 months later, America sent up its own artificial satellite called the Explorer. Then, 3 years later, Lieutenant Yuri Gagarin from Russia was the first man in the whole world to go up into space and go all the way around the Earth one time. We call that orbiting. That's pretty cool. Then, in 1962, America sent up a man named John Glenn to do the same thing. He orbited the Earth. It was very exciting. All of this was happening because there were just so many people in the world that really thought we could get to the moon, and they wanted to make it happen. And Russia and America were kind of fighting over who would be first. All right, so now we get to the super cool part. On July 20th of 1969, 3 men named Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins all got on a spacecraft called the Apollo 11 mission, and they flew from Florida all the way up into space, and then they finally got to the moon. Millions of people all across America and the world watched from their TV sets, so excited as these 3 men carefully climbed out of their spacecraft and started walking around on the moon. People couldn't believe it. They got out of their Apollo 11 spacecraft and explored the moon for 2.5 hours. They spent their time looking around, taking pictures, and collecting rocks and doing experiments. When it was finally time for them to come home, they stuck an American flag in the ground and they left a plaque that said who they were and when they'd come. One of the really funny things about the moon is that the moon doesn't have any weather or any wind. So you know how our American flags are kind of flappy and then they might blow in the wind? Well, the flag on the moon doesn't do that. It actually has a stick in the top of the flag to keep it out straight so that everyone can see the flag. But also, the footprints of these astronauts are still in the moon. So one day when any of you go to the moon, you have to make sure to take a picture and send it to me because I want to see the footprints, okay? And since that very first trip called the Apollo 11, there have been 10 other astronauts that have gone to the moon. In fact, right now, there are 3 men named Chris Cassidy, Anatoly Ivanishin, and Ivan Wagner all up in space right now on something we call the space station. That's where astronauts go and stay for many days at a time, doing space-related experiments. So space exploration is pretty cool. And still happens today. Before we end our video, I have a special guest for you. When I knew I was going to be talking about the moon landing, I thought to myself, I know people who remember watching the moon landing. So I called my mommy and daddy and I asked them if they would tell you what they remember about watching the moon landing when they were little. They videotaped a reply and they sent it to me, and now I think we should take a look.
Well, hello. We are Abby's mommy and daddy, and we remember when they landed on the moon. So Miss Polly is going to talk about what she remembers first.
Okay. Well, I remember sitting with my family and the news was on and it was talking about this amazing thing that was happening, that they were actually sending people to the moon, and they were traveling in this big, amazing rocket thing, and it just didn't make any sense to me. But more than anything, what I remembered was wanting to watch my regular shows that I like to watch on TV. And I couldn't watch them on TV because it was on every single channel that we had.
Everyone.
You couldn't turn to anything else. Whatever channel you put it on, moon. The moon was everywhere.
What I remember is that there was a gas station close to our house that had a toy that they gave away at the time where you could kind of poke it out and make kind of a model of the moon rocket spaceship thing. And I remember laying on my stomach. I was going to be 9 years old. I was laying on my stomach in front of our television, and I had all of this in front of me on the floor, and I was putting this together while it was on TV. And when it was landed, I made my space module, and I could kind of see it in my hand and see it on the TV on the moon. It was the most amazing thing. But I remember when they landed on the moon, and I remember when Neil Armstrong walked on the moon. I remember that. Great memory. See you later.
Bye.
Wow, that was so neat. Some of that I hadn't even heard before. And you know what else? I bet you know some people that remember the moon landing. So you should ask Mommy or Daddy, and definitely your grandparents, to see who you can talk to in your family who might remember what they were doing on July 20th, 1969. All right, that was all that I had for today. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye!